Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Nicole Matarese. Nicole, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me on, Ken. Thank you. I'm doing well. How are
No,
you?
I am doing great, and this is such an honor for me. We'll get to why here in a second, because before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Nicole is a passionate, independent horror movie actor and producer from New York. And I said I'm very excited to have her here. And the reason why is she's done things with projects that I'm huge fans of. Obviously, I'm a big fan and a friend of Vin for Never Hike Alone 2, which you were just a part of. With Womp Stomp Films, Murder Size by AMP Films. Got a lot of friends that were a part of that, and Curse of the Weredeer by Troma. So, with these, what was it like being a part of these?
It's awesome. So I got a more of a hands-on experience with Curse of the Weredeer, because I went to set to work on that. The director, Ben Johnson, is a friend of mine. We have a podcast together currently called Totally Tunular. Troma guy worked on other Troma productions, went to set for that, acted in the movie, as well as have an associate producer credit on it. So really excited about that. That just premiered at Trauma Dance in New York this past September. So that was really lovely. Yeah, it was awesome. And with Murder Size, and Never Hike Alone 2, I am an associate producer on Never Hike Alone 2 and a co-executive producer on Murder Size. So it's a little less hands-on. But with Murder Size, I went to the California premiere. Actually, I want to say that was the actual premiere as well. But regardless, California premiere, went to that this past summer, and it was great. Got the opportunity to hang out with the cast crew, which I knew from online but hadn't interacted with in person. Angie and Paul are absolutely lovely people. Really awesome. And Never Hike Alone 2. Great director. Vincent and I have messaged a bit on social media. He's super sweet. Haven't gotten the opportunity to meet him in person yet, but look forward to doing so one day. Love Never Hike Alone 2. I think all three of those movies are ones that people are really going to enjoy if you like horror.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think especially with Vin, his thing is like he doesn't go out and make these movies to try to make money. He does them
Yeah.
because he's truly passionate about Friday the 13th and he wants to create
Yeah.
that amazing piece of art that's going to stick around. And that's I feel like when you have these fan films like that, Roseblood, things like that, they are more of passion projects. So you fall in love with these films even more
Mm-hmm.
because they're made by fans that want to make a great Friday the 13th entry, not by studios that want to make a quick buck. So um
Yes. And it's contagious. I totally agree. Like I saw Vincent on an interview of another horror podcast I love called PVD Horror. And like you said, his passion for Friday the 13th is contagious. I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be a part of whatever this guy's a part of. So absolutely, you could feel it in these independent filmmakers. It's really awesome, for sure.
it really is. I think that those are some of my favorite films. Obviously, I love going to see a nice blockbuster horror film. I like to
Mhm.
sit in the theater and have a good time. But when I
Yeah.
see somebody that are making passion project, it's something I'm always gravitated to because I know the love, the passion, the hard work that they really put into making
Yeah.
each and every scene make just look perfect. So, um, and
Yeah.
then August Kiss for Murder Size, that's my homie. So I'm really glad that you were an
Oh,
executive producer on that. So it was really cool to see how
she's so
close
sweet.
knit the horror community can be when you see how we all know each other. And, the 6 degrees thing is really, really
Yes.
cool. So,
It's small.
um,
It's a small community. I started to really notice. Yeah, like I noticed you had my friends from Monster Makeup on. So that
yeah,
was really cool. Oh my gosh, they're so sweet. Yeah, it really and it's cool, August. She's another like online friend. Haven't got to meet her in person, but would love to. She's so sweet. My gosh. And she
she
was great in
is.
Murder Size. Really awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
She's just like the kindest person. I've been able to, I had her on an episode, and then we got to do a couple things together. So I was very excited to be able to work with her because she's just a sweet and genuine person. And we know some of the things that you've done, and I know that right now, especially with the strike just ending and
Mhm.
NDAs and stuff like that. Do you have anything coming up down the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Um, I think the best way for me to kind of put it is to for everyone, if you it'll be a plug as well. If everyone could check out my IMDb when they get the chance, it's just my first and last name, Nicole Matarese. The way I kind of go about it is I'm pretty hands off. So if I see a project online that I'm pretty passionate about, I'll either like interact with the filmmaker or I'll just kind of fund it or whatever. So yeah, I would just tell people just to keep an eye on my IMDb page, and that's probably the best way just to keep like an eye on what I'm about. I more or less, I would say 99% of the time am only involved in projects that I think are just like I'm incredibly passionate about, like similar to what you said. Like if a project sounds really cool or like a movie plot sounds interesting, I'll latch onto it. So anything that is on my IMDb page, put it this way, is a recommendation for anyone to check out. So yeah, that'd probably be the best way to find out what I'm up to. Is just
Well,
keep an eye on that.
well, no, the positive about that is you don't have to go far to look for that, and you don't even got to remember how to spell her name because I have all of her links down in the description. Not only do I have her IMDb, I have her social media pages as well. So that way you can go and follow her. Like she said, that's the easiest way to keep up to date on what she's doing in the future and what she's working on right now. So, we know what you've been doing lately, and we know hopefully you'll have a lot more of these amazing projects coming up for you here in the future, Nicole. But here for a little bit, I would like to go back to the past and
Mm-hmm.
talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And
Yeah,
Nicole, the first horror movie you watched was.
Black Swan. Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
funny because in the last 10 episodes, I've done four movies that I've never done before. And
Okay.
I think it's really a testament to how ever expanding the horror community is. You guys seen on the thumbnail, this is episode number 498.
Oh,
So in
congrats! Yay.
498 episodes, I'm still finding brand new movies to talk about that people have new experiences with. So, real quick before we talk about Black Swan, because I'm excited to talk about this because it's your first horror movie, but it's also one I haven't gotten to speak about on the podcast. But there was another movie that was quite influential on you when you saw it for the first time. Can you want to talk about that one here for a second first?
Yeah, sure. So that one was an American Werewolf in
Without
London. I
a love
appreciate you
of
letting me kind of have the
my
floor to talk about both.
own.
That one was maybe, let's say, for lack of a better description, let's say the second most impactful horror movie that I've seen. I watched that one in college. A couple of dorm mates invited me over and watched it for the evening, and I'd say that one was influential because it kickstarted my like interest in being like, oh, this is something I want to continue to work on. Um, and yeah, like kind of kickstarted me getting into this like independent filmmaking world. I got to work on some independent films, in college, like student films, some that were horror related, some that were not. And I just remember watching an American Werewolf in London with these roommates that were already passionate about horror, and I was just like floored, like, oh my gosh, if I could ever work on something at all like this, I would just like it would just be amazing.
Mhm. And
So
it's funny you say
yeah.
that because I have Jack sitting right
Oh
next to
my gosh,
me all the time.
that is so
Um,
cool. Oh my, I've never
yeah,
seen that before. Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome. Oh my God. He's
super,
like the
super
best part of
dope.
that movie too. That's the best like scene when he's like talking to, and I forget the main character's name, which is terrible, but you know what I mean? He's like talking to him in the hospital room. So good.
Yeah, are you gonna eat your eggs? What do you gonna eat
Yeah.
your eggs, David?
David, that's it.
Yeah,
David. He's like, David. Because there's that great line. He's just like, David.
yes.
Yeah.
And what
Oh
what I
my God.
love about American Werewolf is you could even make the argument that Jack is not real because every
Oh.
time David sees Jack, I mean, obviously we know that he was real and he died. He died out there in the moors and stuff like that. But every time David sees him, he's
Mhm.
more and more deteriorated. Just like David's mind is becoming more and more of
Mm.
the werewolf, Jack
Okay.
is becoming more and more zombie like. And if he was just a ghost, he wouldn't change like that.
Yeah, that's a
So,
good point.
American Werewolf is one of those movies that when I watch it, I'm just blown away every time I see it by one, the amazing practical effects
Oh my
in that
gosh.
movie.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. That
Holy
scene, of
shit.
course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to this day, in my opinion, the best werewolf transformation of all time.
Completely
Um,
agree. I think we're in good company too. I think it's like I love anytime it pops up my Twitter feed, I'm like, oh my gosh, like yes, like the best.
yes, and it's a new movie that has really stood the test of time. You
Mhm.
watch it now, and it's just as amazing now as it was when it came out. And it's a movie. I'm glad that the reason I wanted to touch upon this movie is I've always said it has a very special place in my heart because it showed me this is one of my favorite horror comedies of all time. There's a lot of very genuinely funny moments throughout this film, but at the same time, it's another movie that, as a young boy, made me realize that not everything has a happy ending. You don't
That's a good
always
point.
end with
Yeah.
sunshine and rainbows and things like
Yeah.
that. To this day, in my top three practical effect films of all time. I put it up there with Nightmare on Elm Street and The
Nice.
Thing as
I
my
was
favorite practical
Wow, you read
effect
my
movies.
mind. Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was thinking The Thing, and I love Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, all
Yeah,
three. Oh my gosh, yes, incredible movies.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we could talk about how that influenced you later in life to become,
Mhm.
part of the horror genre and want this to be
Yeah,
something that you do with your life. But I gotta go back to Black Swan now
yeah.
because we always talk about movies that were mismarketed, and I feel like Black Swan was a very badly marketed movie. When you watch the
Yeah,
marketing, I was like, this looks like your typical drama film when you're watching the marketing, but you
yeah,
go into this movie and it is suspenseful and terrifying, and you're watching her just Natalie Portman's character just fall apart in real time.
yeah.
So, do you remember about how old you were the first time that you had seen Black Swan?
Oh, I was a teenager in the movie theater, like latching onto my friend's arm. We were both, yeah, I remember exactly. Yes. Yep. So
So, and
yeah.
it's a movie that I just went back and rewatched it so I could freshen up on it. And by the way, that mom is the biggest gaslighting son of a bitch I've ever seen in my
Oh my
entire life.
gosh. So
Um,
scary. Yep.
but
Yep.
do you remember which scene it was, Nicole, that affected you the most from Black Swan?
Yeah, so and you mentioned the mother. So Nina, Natalie Portman's character, is on the phone with her mom. I believe one of the castmates in Swan Lake had just like called her a bitch because they thought she was like teasing them or something like that. Because she goes up to the sign and realizes that she got the lead role. Um, and then she calls her mom and is just like, "Mommy, like I did it," like very like infantile, which is like another like wild part of that movie.
Yeah,
But yeah, like it's interesting. I think that the reason that stood out to me the most is because it's both the high and the low at the same time
sure.
of the movie. Uh Here's this thing that like Nina so desperately wanted and essentially the point of the film, but it's also leads to her
Her downfall.
what's the word I'm looking for? Deterioration, her
Mhm.
downfall. So it's a crazy, kind of high and low in that moment.
It really is. And I think that another thing about that moment is because she had just told the other girl that I believe it was the night before, hey, congratulations, you're going to get the lead role.
That's what it
And
was.
then,
Thank you.
oh boy tried to get with Nina and she slapped the dog shit out of him and was like, that's not what this is about. And then she gets the lead role because of that. So the other girl's like, how dare you? Like, why would you do this to me? Which
Yeah,
you
that's
can,
what it was.
being that woman, I can understand why she's so upset. I
Yeah.
just built my hopes up and told everybody I know that I'm the lead in this thing that we're
Yeah.
also passionate about. So, and
Good
I,
point.
this is a movie that, especially, I've always been a fan of Natalie Portman. I think she's great. I
Me
think
too.
she's fantastic. But this is a movie where I think that she really goes outside of herself and not her comfort zone. She, is scary in this movie, and
Hmm.
she's very strangely childish when
Hmm.
she's around
Yeah.
her mom.
Yep.
The way that she breaks apart her cupcake and like she's very, very childish at times when she's around
Hmm.
her mother, which is again that psyche of what her mother puts her through.
Yeah.
So, we talked about which scene it was that affected you the most, Nicole. But
Hmm.
what would you say your favorite scene? And I know it's going to be hard because it's a dark fucking movie. But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
would you say your favorite scene from Black Swan would be?
I think it might be a bit of a cliche, but it's such a fun because I feel like maybe a lot of people go to this, but that scene where like it's Natalie Portman, so it's and Mila Kunis's character whose name is Lily, I want to say, like their night out. It's like the first night I feel like we see like arguably see Nina letting loose, right? And having like actually enjoying herself. And I think that there's what we kind of build up in the movie is that like Lily is what Nina wishes that she was, carefree, kind of attractive in a different way, a little bit more blasé. And so she lets loose. And I feel like that's finally the like we almost take a breath of
Yeah.
fresh air for the first time in the movie. We're like, oh, okay, we could like, we're at this club, they're meeting attractive men. Like, we could finally put our hair down, kind of like Nina does. And then
Mhm.
from there, it's just like, you know, again, like maybe she's like, I think that she's jealous of. There's an argument to be said online that I've read that Lily might not. That actually Mila Kunis has talked to herself. Like maybe Lily isn't real. Regardless, however you want to look at Lily's character, there's an essence of like jealousy there that I think is really well depicted. So I think that's probably my favorite scene. I love Natalie Portman. I love Mila Kunis. Um, they're fun on screen together.
Yeah.
Again, I think Natalie Portman's like haunting and ingenuic, while um Mila Kunis's character is purposely one dimensional and just like free and fun. So it's a fun dynamic, the two of them.
And I think you could even make the argument of there's that jealousy, but there's also the I'm in love with you. I
That's
think
it.
that
That's what I often go back and forth with that. And I have to say, like, it's that was like because they have yes, they have a lesbian scene together, and that was like a very impactful like moment for so I'm queer. That was an impactful moment for like a young queer horror fan to be like, oh, like this is like cool to see. Like, right, like could it be a jealousy thing or could it be a romance thing? Regardless, like nice to see some sort of queer dynamic represented
right.
in film and like a horror film. So
Well,
definitely
especially like you said,
interesting.
like with queer representation, queer representation has always been a part of horror.
Yeah,
Um,
true,
and
true.
I
Yeah,
think that sometimes in Alfred Hitchcock, you watch Rope, and that's just a gay dream. Like it's a total. There's so many gay references, and you even make the argument about Scream and all the gay subplots between Billy and
cool.
Stu,
Good.
and horror's always had a way of taking the things that are considered taboo and
Mhm.
making them almost normalized in their films because
Yes, good
what makes
point.
you uncomfortable, let's take that and let's push it in your face, and
Mhm.
especially now, because one of the biggest terms, Nicole, and you'll the more you get to know me, the more you'll be like, wow, he wasn't lying. I fucking hate the term woke horror. I
Folk
hate
horror. Okay,
that
okay.
term because that it's an oxymoron to me. That's like saying
Mm.
dairy milk.
Okay, yeah,
Horror
that's a good point.
has
I see what you're
always
saying.
been woke. Like in
Mm.
1968, you got Night of the Living Dead, where you have a black man saving a white woman and then being taken out because he's a zombie. Horror has always been ahead of the curve on social
Mhm.
issues, whether it be
Good point.
LGBTQ plus,
Mhm.
um, the divide in society. The people under the stairs is all about gentrification, and Candyman's all about gentrification. And so when you
Right,
have
right,
Black Swan come out with these two characters who are very well known in the public,
right.
whether it's that
Yeah,
70s show or
yeah.
Sweet Home
Star
Alabama,
Wars.
whatever the hell that shit was,
Right, right.
Natalie
Yeah, yeah,
Portman
yeah.
was in.
Yep, yep.
But you have these two main characters that are having this, and I don't even want to say a lesbian relationship because it's more like I'm just passionately in love with you as a person. It's
It's
I don't
one
think that either
sided. Oh, or that. That's a good point too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that either one of them is deliberately made to be queer in the movie. Which, if they are, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, if you're in
Right.
love with somebody, it doesn't matter what genitals that person
Good
has. And I
point.
think that's what
Yeah,
they're trying to say in
yeah.
this movie. It's not even about I love you because you're a woman. I love you because I'm infatuated with what you are and the person you are, and that
Mm,
infatuation to me, nothing else matters. The genitals
good
doesn't
point.
matter. I'm in love with you, and I just want you, whether it's to be you or to be with you. That's what
Right.
I want.
And I think
So.
that's like speaks well to, I mean, and like I'll just speak from my own experience, like as a queer woman, like sometimes that is the case. Like, like you meet someone, it's like, oh, do I like have a crush on you or do I just like what you're about, So
Right.
it's like that's a very good depiction of it. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does a really good job. I mean, look, and like we're on the same page. Like I think I'm like attracted more so to independent cinema than mainstream cinema. But that being said, this is mainstream cinema. It won an Oscar. It's horror. Like I mean, or Natalie Portman won the Oscar, which is also
Yep.
awesome. Like it's great to see these things represented in mainstream. Again, I think I'm more attracted to independent, but still good to see in the mainstream.
When you can bring queer representation to the mainstream in a way that's not goofy
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah, it's a good point.
unrealistic, I
Yeah,
think that's when it's amazing to me. I don't need to see, the most outlandish type of queer in a movie for me to know that person's gay. They
good
don't
point.
have to walk around flaunting how gay they are to be gay. And that's when you have a movie like this, that's on the back burner. We see that they're
Yeah, good
queer.
point.
We see that they are in love with each other. They have that lesbian scene,
Mm-hmm.
which when you're watching the movie, you're just like, that's love. That's all I looked at it as. It's like, wow, that's true, genuine love.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. When they do it in the mainstream and they do it respectfully and tactfully, it's awesome. It's fucking so good to see that it's not just taken as a joke or played
Yep.
for as a laugh or like a
Yeah.
sympathy part where someone comes out of the closet. Like it's a
Yeah.
genuine, real. We don't have to touch on it. Are you gay? Am I gay? No, they just they do it. They feel each other.
Yeah.
I don't want to. And when I say it like this, I don't mean in the dirtiest way, but from
I know what you
inside,
mean.
they
Like
feel what they, you know what
like
I
a
mean? They
connection, like even like of the
yes,
heart or like of the mind, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, like absolutely. I I think it's like it's very cool. And again, like I just think that like setting aside the queer aspect of it, the let's say the queer female aspect of it or the female aspect of it, just like figuring out who you are as a woman too.
yeah,
It's like just an incredibly complex movie that I think has aged really well and touches upon so much that is so challenging of I mean, I'll just say the female existence, not that I want to exclude anyone, just like I guess speaking for myself. You know what I mean? Like just like figuring out who you are, what you like, your fears, your wants, your desires, and maybe what you want um and this like perfection that you strive for isn't necessarily what you need. You know, like kind
right.
of depicted in this movie how it ends up being, not good for Natalie Portman's character. So it's very
Well,
complex. It's
a
great.
lot of, and I know men deal with this too, but it's more broad with women. The desire to be perfect,
Yeah.
making herself throw up in the bathroom, literally
Right.
breaking her nails to try to perfect this
Oh,
dance.
I still close my
Um,
eyes when I like, oh
yes,
my God,
yes.
that's the one scene I'm like, I can't even look. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And like I
Yeah.
said, this is not sex specific. I know a lot of men go through,
Yes. And I don't mean to, yes.
anorexia,
Yep.
bulimia, and it's not funny. It's not a joke. It's not, hey, you're a
Absolutely.
pussy. If you're going through something, you're going through it and you can reach out for
Absolutely.
help always. You guys all know I'm very, very big on mental health. My DMs are always open if you're feeling alone. But especially when you have that typical, well, I've noticed it a lot with dancers too. You have to have the perfect body. So you see her, the anorexia jumping up.
Right.
You have to have the perfect dance move. So she's literally breaking her body to make this happen. And you can even make the argument for something she's not completely in love with, something she's been forced down her throat from her mother her whole life. So,
Oh, wow. That's a
um,
really good point. Wow. I hadn't even thought about that. I guess stepping back. Yeah.
yeah,
I guess like I guess because it's her story, I had assumed like, oh, this is her dream. That's what she wanted. But you're right. If you look at it from another lens, it might not even be hers. It might be someone else's dream that she's
right.
living for
For her
someone else.
mother.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's
Well, because
interesting.
and then you have that part where she doesn't want to eat the cake because
Oh, right, right.
she says, I'm just not feeling it, and then she takes a bite and she's like, but we just watched her making herself throw up before, so she's so scared of her figure that she doesn't even want to celebrate her birthday with a piece of cake, and that's that's real. Like that's a real thing that happens to men and women, and it's such a sad thing that
It's so
we
sad.
have to put on this image of perfection.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
this movie
It's
is a
so
lot
sad.
deeper on rewatch. I'm trying to pick up on all these things so I can sound smarter than I am when I'm watching it. And there's this movie has a lot of depth to it. That you can go in and just dissect and rewatch and pick up on things you didn't see before. And it has one of the saddest slash weirdest death scenes I've ever seen when you have Natalie Portman killing Natalie Portman.
Okay, yeah.
Mila
Right, and that's
Kunis
still a
in
head
this case.
scratcher to me. It's like what? Yep,
Um,
yep.
and now the weirdest part of this to me is when Mila Kunis, who is she, Natalie Portman sees it as herself. When she's laying there, she reaches her hand up and puts her hand on the real Natalie Portman. Her
Mhm.
neck starts to elongate, like she's
Oh
not
yeah.
real. And so, like we always talk about the kills because this one doesn't have many, but I think that's one of the more impactful kills from any movie. Do you remember how that kill sat with you when you had first watched it?
Oh man, when I first watched it, I don't remember that feeling. I wish I could. I did watch it recently though, and what I will say is that perhaps it was just the same as when I first watched it, where I was just confused, kind of like I am now. It's kind of like which maybe that's the point for it to be disorienting. Like, what exactly is going on here? Is it real? Is it a hallucination? Is this like a metaphor, like kind of the death of who she once was and now who she is?
Right.
Um, and then spoiler alert, Mila Kunis's character is on stage with her at the end of the movie. So it's like, wait, so maybe it didn't. I would say disoriented, but not in a bad way. And
Right.
probably the intention of Darren Aronofsky. I always get his name. I always kind of get tongue tied when I say his name, but right. Maybe the intention of the director was for it to be disorienting. I don't know if would
And I
you
think it
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Because the way I always looked at that scene was this is where she's killing off the part of her she didn't want anymore. And then when she saw it as Mila Kunis down there, it came to I don't need her to be me anymore. I'm also not only killing off the part of me I don't want,
Mm,
I'm killing off my desire to be her so I can be
mhm.
comfortable with me. That's the way I this movie is very ambiguous, very open to interpretation.
Yeah,
I'm not
true.
saying my way is the right way, but that's the way that I took it when I had seen it for the first time and how when I rewatched it, it really sunk in like that to me. So Nicole, we've talked about your first horror movie being Black Swan, and we've talked about a very impactful movie to you being American Werewolf in London. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you.
Okay.
My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite scary movie, Nicole?
Oh my
What is
gosh,
your
my
favorite horror movie of all time?
okay. I'm sorry if this is cliche, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It is, I want to say, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it's a perfect horror movie. A few years ago, if you had asked me that question, I would have said The Shining. But I think that, yeah, I think The Nightmare on Elm Street is just perfect from start to finish. Um, I mean, what an absolute, like, talk about, like, I know it's like such a, we all know Nightmare on Elm Street. It's, in the zeitgeist. But like, truly, what a scary concept. You're not safe in your own sleep, in your own head, in your own bed, in the comfort of your own room. You're not you're
You
not
can't
safe. There's
run.
nothing scarier than that.
Right. You can't run away from sleep. It's not like
No.
Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees where you can run and hide. You can't run and hide from sleep. And one thing I will partially agree with you on, I've said numerous times that if you take out the last 5 minutes of Nightmare on Elm Street, I know I just said
The
this a
ending's
couple
weird.
episodes, guys.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, the ending's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate the Freddy car. I hate the blow up doll mom. If you take that out, it's genuinely the perfect movie. They knew how to do what they did with a very, very small budget. That's why you only see Freddy Krueger on screen in that movie for like 7 minutes. Um, you never see Freddy kill anybody in that movie. Tina gets dragged up the wall, but you don't see Freddy doing it. Johnny Depp goes in the waterbed. You don't see Freddy doing it. Jesus Garcia gets hanged in the prison cell. You don't see Freddy doing it because they didn't have the budget to make him look the same on every take. So that's why he's in the dark. He's in the shadows. And that's
What?
why I've always said this is one of my favorite practical effect movies because they had dick for budget and they still were able
Yeah.
to pull out the things they did with the waterbed kill, with Tina going up the wall. Hey, Tina, watch this, cutting the fingers off. Like, it's just amazing to me that they were able to make such an iconic movie with nothing for a
Yeah.
budget. So I will never argue with anybody that says Nightmare on Elm Street is their favorite horror movie because to me it's as close to perfect as you can get in the horror
Yeah.
community. Um, so we've
Completely
talked
agree.
about your first horror movie, probably your most impactful horror movie, and your favorite horror movie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Black Swan, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking Black Swan on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing here, Nicole, is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, zero
Mm.
skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Nicole, what would your ranking of Black Swan be?
Yeah, I would say five. I'd say it was incredibly impactful on my life.
There
Um,
was no thinking. Yeah, it's a five. That's it.
it was just like so, because I feel like it was like, I don't know what it was. Everyone was talking about it. Like, I don't know if we were just more so moviegoers back in that time, but like everyone, their mother had seen Black Swan. Everyone was talking about it. It was like right before I had gone off to college, so I feel like it was like my kind of last hurrah of like,
Right.
a bit big budget, which is, yeah, big budget horror movie in cinemas with friends. And like, I just think it was like incredibly, it's incredibly psychological. Um, I'm just, yeah, it was a five. It was a five. I mean, I'm trying to think, just like, I can't think of ways that it hasn't impacted my life, to be honest. I feel like I talk about it all the stinking time, which people are probably sick of me talking about it. Um, but yeah, it's a cornerstone for sure for me in horror.
Well, I'm glad
So
it's starting to get this cult following because, like I said, I put this in with Jennifer's Body, and I don't mean that the movies
mm,
are similar. I had no interest in watching either one of these movies when I seen the marketing of the film. Um, the marketing was so badly done that I was like, this looks absolutely atrocious to me.
Mhm.
And Jennifer's Body and Black Swan, I think, are two very, very underrated, amazing horror movies that people slept on. Maybe it was because the same thing as the marketing. Maybe they saw the marketing of it and was like, this doesn't look very good. And
Yeah.
once you actually go and watch these movies, like I was blown away by both of these films. I was like, these are great fucking movies. So,
Yeah, I love Jennifer's
I'm
Body. That's
so
another
good.
great one. Yeah, really good.
So
That's
I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, all of Nicole's social media links, as well as IMDb page, are all down in the description. So make sure you're checking that out and following her. Nicole, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
cool.
Um,
Thanks.
Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.